What up?
Hey,
Sorry I'm late, man. I've made a series of unfortunate and regrettable decisions this morning.
It's February 2022. This is the Pilote podcast with David Fuller and Corey Smith.
let's kick it off.
All right.
Great response to our first episode. We had some amazing comments. I was actually blown away.
I think that people like us. And it's not just because we're so handsome. The subject matter resonates. I've gotten a lot of positive response too. And they're like, we really like what you're talking about and how you're talking about it. And I think that's not only a testament to our thinking about doing this podcast, but I think that there's an appetite for not only information about the subject matter, but like honest information. You know what I mean? There's a lot of hype.
And I had a haircut, which is always good for radio. No, I like some of the comments. One of the comments I saw was, I like your anti-crypto bro attitude or something like that.
We're not anti-crypto.
But I always have to now think I have to put a caveat at the beginning of every comment, which is, I am bullish on this technology. I think it's awesome. But we need to just call out some of the Kool-Aid drinkers.
I think it's important. We've seen this before. A lot of these things are just the natural part of the exploration of this next evolution, this Web3, right? So these things like, you know, I may have been joking around last week about NFTs as trading cards, right? And that may
some of them
be
are.
something.
Some of them are trading cards.
And that may be a model that lasts 10 or 12 or 25 years. It may not. You know, there were a lot of things that, like, you know, we talked about last week, ringtones and screensavers.
NFT is the WAP of Web3. Like, NFTs is to Web3 what WAP was to mobile internet. It was rubbish. It was the first thing out there. It was a terrible technology, but it was the beginning of mobile internet. Right?
That's right. And it's a stepping stone. You know, it's the idea of fail fast, fail forward. Things that we talk about in business and in Agile all the time is like, we got to not be afraid to fail, not be afraid to try new things and try new models. And these things are important. These new things that may end up being like 5 years from now, be like, that was the stupidest thing. It's just another stepping stone, stepping us toward what the thing is going to be.
Well, that leads us into our first news story of the week, actually. Our first news story of the week is that Facebook has seen a decline in daily active users, and consequently, or it might be related, it might be correlated, it might not be, that they've seen a massive decline in their share price. Maybe Facebook's time is done. What do you think?
I'll tell you my opinion, and I'm not afraid to share it. I think that Facebook is making these large investments into the metaverse because they know they're done. I think they're in the decline. You know, a lot of people are very averse to Facebook. They have a very negative emotional response to Facebook. People kind of maybe unfairly hang all of social media's ill will to our social fabric on Facebook because they're the largest. And I think that they probably wisely have made investments into Meta, changing their name to Meta or changing their parent company name to Meta and investing into the metaverse because they see this is where the time that they need to pivot their business towards what's next, knowing that social media is in decline. That's my personal opinion.
Well, the Meta Facebook rebranding the timing was off. It was right after the Facebook papers, after these allegations or stories came out that Facebook wasn't very good for people. I mean, it's not very good for young girls who have body image problems. It's not very good for people who are being bullied. It's not very good for a whole bunch of people who are identifying themselves and their success based on what they're seeing on social media, which isn't how it started. There's a network effect that happens with all of these platforms, and I was involved with one very early in the early 2000s. There's a few things going on. One is that people went to Facebook because that's where their friends and family were. And originally that's what a social network was. I'm a digital nomad. I'm currently living 5,000 miles from home. And I've lived away from home for a long time. So it's kind of nice to see what my what my friends from high school are doing, my friends from college are doing.
Sure.
And, you know, that was its purpose. That was its promise. Stay in touch with friends that you have fallen out of touch with, friends and family, be part of a community, join a tribe, and then it gets corrupted.
You can't control what users do with the tool that you provide to them, right? So, you know, like you said,
True.
social media.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
When it was created, there was the promise of, you know, this was something good. You know, we all remember what it was like when Facebook, MySpace, all these social tools first came out. It was a great way for you to reconnect with old family, high school friends that you never talked to and see what they're doing. And it was a great thing. And then it's kind of torn at our social fabric and created all of these, like you said, problems for young people, young girls with body issues or bullying, or just created this rift certainly in American culture, and a political rift, and further widened the chasm between conservative and liberal people, or progressive and conservative people, and just served to kind of divide people rather than bring people together, which was the promise of social media. And I think that's going to be true with the metaverse too. I'm not trying to pivot the conversation towards the metaverse or Web3, but I think we're going to face these same challenges as we move into this.
We'll get to that, and actually we'll cover that later on in the episode. This happens with every platform. Facebook was started as let's call it what it was. I mean, it's effectively a dating platform for people at Harvard.
The thing is, ironically, this started as a dating platform for college kids, and now it's kind of like the platform for boomers.
Right. Although they always forget us. We're Gen X, mate. So we always get forgotten completely.
Right. Which is fine. I like to be the invisible generation. Just keep me out of it, man.
The Facebook papers coming out and basically showing that they knew that they were causing harm to certain people, and they did absolutely nothing about it.
Right.
That's one thing. And I think certain people have said, I don't need to use Facebook anymore. There's other things out there I can use. Content creators can use TikTok, and kids can use Discord. I mean, there's always new ways that people can talk to each other and relate to each other.
Right.
Then there's this metaverse play or meta play, which some people just don't get. And then other people have gone, well, do we really want to live in a metaverse controlled by Mark Zuckerberg? Right. I can't call it meta. You'll have to forgive me. It's Facebook. I understand Facebook's play from a business standpoint of pivoting towards the metaverse. And I'd love for you to, I would love for you to disagree or give me a counterpoint perspective on this, is I feel like Facebook is going to become the AOL of Web3. And let me explain that. I see you rolling your eyes at it. No, I'm with you. I'm just trying to roll my memory back to discs in the mail from AOL.
Right. So you remember, like, during the first iteration of the web, right? Yeah. When we had to connect to the internet through dial-up, and you had to use like a service like AOL or CompuServe, and then like your interface, the way the web looked to you, looked like AOL's interface. You didn't have a web browser. You didn't have Chrome or Firefox.
I do remember that.
Right. So like your only kind of perception of the way the web looked and felt was AOL's interface, right?
Yeah. I can also see a mass market metaverse, which could be meta. There could be a version of the metaverse which is, I don't know, the next evolution of Sandbox or Decentraland or something we haven't seen yet. But I can also see an AOL version of the metaverse, which is just a safe corporate version of the metaverse. That everybody else likes. It's the difference between Napster and Apple Music. Right. So you've got
that's right. I would say it's a great analogy.
You've got the super cool early adopters who are like, I'm not gonna pay for music. I'm gonna download Napster, or I'm gonna download torrents, and I'm gonna get my music for free because I'm a cool geek and I know what I'm doing. And then Apple comes along and says, well, downloading Napster or a torrent service is really difficult, and you don't know what you're going to get, and it's illegal. And wouldn't it just be easier if you download the Apple version and you pay $1 for a song? And the mass market go, well, yeah, I don't understand Napster. I've never got it. But if Apple tell me that I can download a song for $1, then that's my version of music streaming. And the metaverse, I think, is going to be very similar. You'll have the cool kids and the geeks who go, yeah, I'm I'm out pushing the envelope, doing something completely new, downloading my NFT avatar and buying land and doing crap. And everyone else is like, I don't understand that. Meta, can you just give me a version that I don't have to think about? And Meta will give them that version of the metaverse, and a whole bunch of people will go, that's so much easier than the other stuff.
And that's exactly what I think that they're going to be. They're going to be the really simple, easy way to get into for people to enter the Web3 or the metaverse and access it. That's the safe corporate way.
Right.
And I think that will be a very popular and used platform for a while.
At the end of the day, I can go into a new metaverse. I can go into Sandbox tomorrow, but none of my friends are there. Why would I join a new strange place if none of my friends are there, if none of my people are there? And that's this network effect. And maybe that's why the shine is coming off Facebook, because people are starting to leave it. And they're starting to say, well, and Twitter's the same. Yeah, Twitter, when I joined it, had a lot of engagement. I had a lot of people replying to my posts. There were lots of likes or whatever. I felt like there was a discourse. And I feel like from a professional point of view, a lot of that engagement and interaction has moved onto LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn feed now looks like what my Twitter feed used to look like.
I see the same thing.
And nobody's really engaging on Twitter because it's this weird, hateful place.
It's interesting that you said that, because I was just thinking that the other day that LinkedIn has become the new Twitter. Maybe for guys like us, social media has become as much of a professional content outlet and input as it is a personal one. I probably spend as much time on LinkedIn that I do on every other social platform. For intake, things that I do in my, like if I'm sitting around at night, TikTok, number one. I love TikTok
yet, but I
love TikTok and Instagram, and I post a lot on both
Instagram.
of
I
those.
love just because I just find joy. Instagram's the only social media I get joy out of.
Me too. And well, TikTok too.
Right. So let's get into our second big news story of the week.
Yeah.
NFTs outsold the entire movie industry in January. The NFT collection Bored Ape Yacht Club and Mutant Ape Yacht Club did more in sales on OpenSea, 495 million, than the global movie industry did at the box office, 482 million. Is this actually a news story or not?
I think it's a news story.
Firstly, I can't think of a decent big movie release in January.
Well, let me think. No. There's not.
There wasn't.
There's
so
not
people aren't going to films because of the pandemic, and this is based on box office. So this isn't anything. This is kind of selective data that says there are a bunch of NFTs sold in January, 495 million worth, but at the end of the day, people aren't going to cinemas. Netflix alone would have done $2.2 billion worth of revenue. So to say that NFTs are doing better than Hollywood is kind of a really selective statistic.
It's selective, but I still think that this number is significant.
The price of a movie ticket is what, $20?
Yeah.
And the price of the price of the lowest Bored Ape NFT is $280,000. So it's not exactly comparing apples with apples. No,
it's not. Well, I mean, it's selective. The lens that I'm looking at it through is the volume and the amount. Like this is a substantial amount of money changing hands. Like that, and it doesn't get press, and I think that it should.
But is it 495 million? Is a big number, but when you compare it to what Amazon did in January or what Apple did in January. So to say it outsold the global movie industry is a little bit misleading. From my point of view.
If this number is real, if this much currency has changed hands in this marketplace, that's substantial considering who they are and the size of the market and the size and
right.
These are individuals.
Right. $500 million is still $500 million.
I'm just more interested in the story behind that, I guess I should say.
So you're
right. I think it is misleading.
Out of that came another story, which is that the creators are in talks to get some funding, which would value this company, and I'm not sure it's even a company,
Right.
at $5 billion.
This goes back to 1999, right? If you can find somebody that will put that kind of a valuation on your company and give you the money, God bless you.
BuzzFeed this week kind of outed the founders, and
Right, I saw that.
The entire Web3 community went, "That's not on. You can't actually want to know who's going to get the money from a $5 billion company. That's that's not on."
Let's take a step back if you don't mind.
No,
So you mentioned that they went to a VC that specializes in Metaverse or Web3 companies. That's interesting to me, right? I'd like to get one of these guys on the show.
Yeah.
And like ask them, what's the criteria by which you evaluate Web3 companies and not only evaluate them, but value them for what they do, and how do you look at them and say, okay, here's a company that's building something that's going to have some longevity.
So moving on, there is a link between this story and our next one, which is on LinkedIn.
I know what you're going to talk about.
You know what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about these people on LinkedIn who are trying to use their NFTs as profile pics. But LinkedIn had a very different purpose, as you know, as we were saying before, different networks have different purposes. If Corey is connected to Dave and you trust Dave, then you can trust Corey, and your reputation kind of went with your connections. Some of that has been lost, and there's a lot of social media mechanics now where people are literally just collecting connections for this, for volume. LinkedIn has terms and conditions, and they always have, that says for the same reasons that your profile picture should be your photo. But there are some people who are saying they should be able to use their Bored Ape NFT as their profile picture on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn's pushed back and said, no, you can't.
It is a professional networking site.
Right.
Why would you want in a professional context to have an NFT picture of whatever that's not a picture of you as your profile picture?
So here's their argument. Their argument is that they saw it early, and therefore they were really smart by seeing it early, and thereby having it shows that they were early and smart.
Yeah, great. You get a gold star for that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that defeats what I believe is the ethos or the purpose of this website, which is to professionally connect with other professionals, and they want to see who you are. That's just dumb. I think it's dumb. I'm going to say it. It's dumb.
That'll be our soundbite for our promotion next week.
Yeah. I try not to engage with people, and you've seen me do it. I will argue with people online. I try not to, but it's just this is not the hill to die on, nor is it the time to die on it for your NFTs.
That brings us into our topic of the week, which I've renamed based on what you were watching last week. But we're going to call this segment "We Need to Talk About." And this week we need to talk about identity.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Great name for the segment. Let's keep that. We need to talk about identity. I got things to say, but I'll let you start.
All right. So I'm gonna sort of lay this out here because we need to put it into a Web3 context. ID in the old sense and identity are not the same thing. So we need to say that up front. So,
yes.
ID is something that you use for age verification. You might need it to buy alcohol. You might need to get into a certain place in order to buy a plane ticket, move between countries. ID is not the same as identity, right? So an identity is a very amorphous thing. It's the sum total of a whole bunch of things, including your appearance, your actions, your beliefs, your relationships, your identity is a much more complex thing than your ID. So in a Web3 context, it's conflated and mixed up with a whole bunch of other issues, which include things like privacy and anonymity and transparency and accountability and reputation. And these aren't the same thing as identity, right? So some people get these things confused and they say, oh, well, no, Facebook's using my data and they're selling it to advertisers. Well, okay, they may or may not be, but that doesn't change your identity. Just because Facebook knows your birthday, which is public domain information anyway. And they allow an advertiser to use that to target you for a certain type of product, then that actually doesn't invade your privacy in any way at all. To bring this back to basics as to why the Web3 crowd put identity as part of this new movement or new type of internet, it goes back to the original white paper written by Satoshi Nakamoto. And Bitcoin in day is a currency, and it's about financial transactions. So it wasn't ever a white paper to define a new community or a new utopian vision for the way individuals interact with each other. It was a currency. It was a way of people trading with each other. When he wrote the white paper, it had no identity requirement. Unlike a lot of websites and even a lot of Web3 companies that require you to put in your name, your email address, your mobile number, and a bunch of other data in order to create an account, the Bitcoin blockchain doesn't actually require that. You can just be an anonymous public, wallet with a private key and a public key, and there's no other requirements. You can just be that, right? Which is one of the reasons why it's being used for nefarious purposes.
Right. Yes.
There's a reason why certain elements of society have cottoned onto blockchain, because there's a way of hiding your identity. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to be anonymous, right? And actually, a lot of people are saying that there needs to be this, maybe at a personal level, yes, my private data needs to be protected, but at a corporate level, there needs to be absolute radical transparency, and potentially there is some real brand or business value in radical transparency.
Identity is a big thing. Identity and access management is a big thing here because of the recent story that the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service here in the United States, is going to start to require users to use an identity service, ID me, to access your Internal Revenue Service, your tax records through their website. And people are freaking out because they got, you got to provide a selfie and a picture of your driver's license to authenticate yourself for your identity. Meanwhile, everybody's on Facebook doing a 10-year challenge. Never mind that, but they're freaked out that they have to provide a selfie to get access to your tax records, which I think is hilarious. But I think there's a disconnect, like you said, between the general public, between identity and their reputation or whatever, and they think it's all the same. It's really not. And as we move into this new evolution of the web and Web3, promises of that with the blockchain is, like, as you said, now it's anonymity, but it's also identity portability, right? So as we kind of think back to these people wanting to use their NFTs as their profile pictures, one of the things is they can actually portable their identity, their immutable identity information. So for into the future, they'll be able to attach their identity information to those NFTs and use that as access, which is one of the big things that we talk about in corporate America now, is the experience friction that people have in providing, this situation with the IRS. People don't like to have to provide or go through extra steps to provide identity to get to access. But it's also the types
of identity, right? So I was looking at one today. I mean, there's a new crypto exchange every hour, it seems. So I thought, okay, this one's offering something which I haven't seen before. I'll download the app. So I downloaded the app, and then it said, okay, we need to do your KYC, which is also known as Know Your Customer. It's a compliance process that basically is to stop money laundering and terrorist funding and a whole bunch of other stuff. If somebody's coming onto a platform where they're trading real money, then you need to know who that person is, where they got their funds from, and where they're sending those funds to, etc. I can kind of understand that. But on the other hand, they wanted 3 forms of address ID. And at the moment, it seems that your physical address seems to be the thing that everyone's head up on. They don't actually care how old you are. They don't care how, who you're married to or what nationality you are. It just depends on where your mail is sent to, which I think is a hangover from
like olden times, the Gilded Age
times when mail was the thing. And
and that's becoming less and less important. As you said, people become digital nomads. I think people, and we've called it the Great Resignation. I'm changing it to the Great Reassessment. I think that people are changing the way they perceive their lives and their jobs and their occupations. And they're thinking about this as like, the address where you live, how many people are using, like, whether they're digital nomads or not, they're using like anytimemailbox.com, where they have a mail forwarding service, where they have an address where they have all their mail sent to. And then once a month, they have it forwarded to them wherever they're at.
I mean, there's some really interesting advantages to this kind of new form of identity. IDs, which are a combination of your actions online and on chain, which a lot of people say, a Web3 crowd are saying to talk about. So certain actions that you take are taken on chain, and they're recorded forever, and you can have multiple identities, and you can have combined identities and whatever else. So I've got my identity, which is my activity online, on chain, off chain, whatever else. And then you and I would have a certain part of our identity, which is co-joined because we're doing this podcast together. And therefore your identity and my identity there would be a certain part which would be mixed. And so you could have multiple identities, which are also mixed identities. But the advantage, some of the advantages of this are actually kind of interesting. If you think about college applications, or you think about job applications, and you think about the amount of prejudice which might be included in somebody's name, this person has submitted an application for a job, and you don't need to know their name. You don't need to know when they were born. You don't need to know their nationality. You don't need to know their gender. But this signature says that they went to school at Harvard and they graduated with this degree. And that's included in the application. But none of the other prejudicial information is shared. So there are some advantages to that.
Right. If people choose to use them.
Yeah, and then the other problem is the onboarding. So where does the original information come from, and how do you verify it? How do I put my birth date into this chain in a way that you can verify that it was actually my birth date? There's got to be a trust agent in there somewhere, whether it's a hospital or a government.
But you divorce the systems, right? You divorce the systems between what you choose to use to identify your identity and what you choose to use to share your information in that trustless architecture, right? So those things are divorced from each other and separate so that they don't commingle. But that's a really great use case for that, is like as an application for college, or an application for a job. Do you think that as over time, at least anyway, as a culture, humans can get past and I'm sure you've heard this before, is like, well, we want to make sure this person's a culture fit.
I mean, that's the utopian side of it. The dystopian side of it is that everything you ever do is recorded forever on chain. Yeah, and then there's there's this social credit style enforcement like China does, where basically I tweeted something when I was 18 and it's gone into the blockchain and I can't remove it, and it's part of my identity, which
we already live that today to a point where, like, but think about all these people, celebrities and public figures that get canceled because they made it, like a comedian made a joke in 1993 and tweeted it, and it was completely appropriate in 1993. Right. But I mean, like, that's a whole other topic. But it's like now, today in 2022, that joke is no longer socially acceptable, and they're canceled.
Yeah. Or if you get conned by a Ponzi scheme and they say, well, this person is obviously not very bright because they were conned by a Ponzi scheme. And it's like, yeah, but there were 27 million other people who were also conned by that Ponzi scheme.
Right, exactly.
So that doesn't necessarily mean they're intelligent or not. I think the saddest thing right now is this, again, going back to this, I'm going to use a picture of an animal NFT as my profile picture to me, that's really sad. That shows that my self-esteem or my self-worth is being defined by an NFT that's being designed or by some other person that apparently gives me more clout than my own face. It's a lot like saying, it's not new. It's like saying, well, I'm defined by where I went to school or by what car I drive or what watch I
think you're right.
or whatever else. But that's
it would be questionable. It's like, okay, why does this guy not want to show his face? Like, is it more important to be like, look how cool I am? I'm using the latest, greatest Gee Whiz NFT, as my profile pic, and that's more important than showing my face. That would be questionable to me if I was considering him for a job. If I was considering, like, somebody was reaching out to me, was like, hey, I'd like to meet or collaborate with you, or like, hey, let's talk about something, or I have an interesting idea. I'd be like, I don't know about this dude.
And I remember going to Indianapolis one year, and there was a guy who had the logo of the Indianapolis Speedway tattooed on his arm.
Yeah, but I find those people questionable too, man.
Yeah, but okay, that's fine. That's one thing to sort of say, I believe in this thing so intensely, I'm going to have it permanently inked onto my body. It's another thing to replace my face with that image.
Right. And as you said at the beginning of the podcast, I don't want to sound like I'm down on NFTs or this idea. I think there's a time and a place for it. I think that using your NFT as a profile pic is appropriate in some place. Twitter allows you to do it. If you want to do it, right?
Yeah, and Twitter's
LinkedIn
fine.
doesn't.
Twitter's got has always had anonymous accounts.
That's right.
You can be the Queen, you can be Devin Nunes' cow, you can be whatever you want on Twitter,
right?
And there's a certain amount of cool stuff that has happened from that. The Arab Spring and a whole bunch of
100%. Yes, perfect example.
Allowed by certain social media platforms being anonymous and people being able to say what they think without any repercussions. I think there are certain places where your face is still important. And I think LinkedIn is one of those places.
There's some baseline rules or understandings that we all agree to. There's a terms of service that we all agree to when we get on these platforms. And it's like, if you want to use it, if you want to do this thing, if you want an NFT as your profile pic, there's places that are cool with that. LinkedIn isn't one of those places. LinkedIn, by design, is a professional networking website.
It's a Web 2 platform that has a terms of
It's a Web 2 platform designed for this specific purpose. Can we just play by the rules or the construct that they've set up for that? Yeah. And we all agree to play by those rules. And let's not change the rules for you. I'm not saying that the platform shouldn't evolve to meet the as the business or the model for what it's designed to do evolves.
There would either be an alternative that says this is the Web3 version of LinkedIn where anything goes. And people would say, right, fine, I'm going to use trustless architecture and I'm going to use blockchain to verify whether this person is a good person or not a good person. And then there'll be a corporate fork that says this is old school LinkedIn, that only photos apply and you can either play by the rules or not. Surely the market and the users will say, I'm going to move either to one or the other. The way they would go to either TikTok or Facebook, or they'll go to...
Right. That's right. I had an interesting conversation with a client this week that got me thinking about how a destination might use the metaverse to promote tourism.
There was a piece of news that came out yesterday, which I'm super excited about, which is that Rockstar have announced Grand Theft Auto 6.
Oh, yeah.
And that actually Red Dead Redemption 2 is the closest thing to a metaverse I've ever experienced.
I haven't actually played it. I actually own the game, but never popped it in.
Red Dead Redemption 2, I've lost months of my life to. It is the most immersive digital experience I've ever experienced. And if I was a destination and I had a choice of building a metaverse to attract tourists or getting a AAA game studio to recreate my city / country as a level or a world for a game like a Grand Theft Auto 6, then I would go the latter every time, because I've only ever been to LA twice, but I've played GTA 5 a lot. And I was watching I think it was Bosch or some other series the other day, and I was like, I've been here. And then I'm like, no, I haven't actually been there, but I was there in Grand Theft Auto 5 because the mapping that they did in that game is so realistic that I feel like I've been to places in LA that I've never been before. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a step up from Grand Theft Auto 5. And from a metaverse experience, there's a lot of stuff going on in that game. Like, you have to go fishing in order to catch fish. You have to cook that fish on a stove. And if you don't cook that fish on a stove, then you lose energy. And there's a real-time element to that. So it's not just, oh, I'm leveling up, or I'm making my character the next cool character, whatever. It's a metaverse experience that says that, and there's an honor system within that game. The outcomes of the game and the way the characters in the game relate to you and the outcomes that you get in the game are related to that honor system.
I think I need to change my perspectives a little bit, and you're helping me think about it, because, you know, I'll admit to being a bit not old-fashioned, but about gaming, right? So gaming is an escape for me, and like,
yeah, me too.
5 feet away from me is my TV and my PlayStation. Right. It's in here in my office, my little cave where I work and play. And I often retreat to games as a way to decompress. Right.
Yeah.
And so the kind of games that I have been drawn to in the last few years are stuff that I can jump in and out of and not have to invest time. Right. So but my wife, I got her a Nintendo Switch, and she likes Animal Crossing, games like Animal Crossing, which kind of lend themselves to these kind of metaverse games where you have to do things and accomplish things and build honor and credit and grow and build. Like, I'm not typically attracted to those kind of games. I'm attracted to Call of Duty or Battlefield.
Hey, I love Call of Duty. Call of Duty Mobile is my nightly get my stress out. I'll
tell you one that I've played for literally years, and my son plays it too. And it's an old game, is Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah,
where you could just kind of jump in, kill people, get out.
No,
you know what I mean?
Casual gaming is
casual gaming.
It's a different thing, right? But I've been a fan of open world games for a while now. I mean, I love the Far Cry series.
GTA. I love Far Cry. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to learn more and play more of these open world games and open myself up to I'm going to be a yes person and open myself, because my son loves those kind of games.
And again, this comes back to value, right? So we were talking last week about some of these new gaming companies that were charging silly money, $1,000 for an NFT for a game that hasn't been built yet.
Right.
Red Dead Redemption 2, $50, $60, I don't know, $75 if you get the super deluxe version.
The Dutch Gold Edition.
Right. Get the Gold Edition. Just put this into context. The main storyline of Red Dead Redemption 2 is 60 hours of gameplay.
Right.
Just the main storyline. And there's probably about 400 hours of side missions.
That's insane.
Right. So in terms of value, for $75, you're getting 600 hours of entertainment versus a movie ticket that gives you $25 for 2 hours, or an NFT game that's giving you nothing.
And it's funny because, like you said, people are like, oh my God, it's $75. It's so expensive. It's like, it's 600 hours of a game.
And this is why Microsoft has bought Activision, and this is why the gaming companies are in such demand, because the metaverse is going to be game driven. These guys know how to create virtual worlds. They know how to create missions. They know how to create economies. If you're Meta and you're saying Facebook, if you're Facebook and you're just saying, we're going to port Facebook into a virtual world, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter whether it's movies, books, games, the human imperative for quests.
The quest of like war game or
just any quest. I mean, like The Hobbit. It's a pretty boring story, but it's a quest. It's a very simple psychological trick. You can't just have a metaverse that says turn up and hope you find something by serendipity. You need a metaverse that says, oh, by the way, if you go into the metaverse with Corey and you team up and you two can go on a quest and you can find the ring and share the spoils, then that's a totally different motivation to just, well, you can talk to Corey in the metaverse. And it's like, yeah, well, I can talk to Corey.
Right. I could do that on the phone or whatever. Now, I value these. I value doing these podcasts because it causes me to think about things about like everything, but like in this case, the metaverse that I had not thought about before. And relative to this gaming thing, like you said, it's like this makes sense to me, and it helps me think about it in terms of business as well. This gaming channel was obvious to me as an area of growth, or an initial area of growth, or a path forward for metaverse. But it's become much more clear to me now, because this is a natural evolution of the way games have been going already for years, like with World of Warcraft,
right,
and those type of quest-based games. This is the natural evolution of and open world games, like you said, like Red Dead Redemption.
That people now are thinking, okay, the metaverse is this VR virtual world, but a book is a metaverse in a sense, right? Because your imagination is filling in all the gaps that the writer is describing. And a text adventure, because you and I were playing text adventures, and it was like, you're in a room, it's dark. And you're like, okay, well, my mind believes I'm in a room and it's dark. I don't need to be wearing VR goggles to
that's right.
put myself in that situation. And it's like, okay, there are 3 exits, and you type E for east, and you go, okay, you are now in a forest. And
right.
Now, okay, Red Dead Redemption 2 is the 25 years later amazing open world version of that, but it's still a quest.
It's still at its core the same thing. Hey, quickly, I want to pivot to one other thing that I had a conversation about this week. So I was having a conversation, as you know, in the midst of this 30-year career in digital and technology and all the great stuff that we've done. I worked briefly for a number of years in advertising and marketing and ad agencies. So, of course, I have a lot of colleagues that work in advertising and digital advertising and marketing still. And I tend to be protective, maybe a little sensitive about my friends in marketing, because I think it's a systemic problem, not only in the advertising and marketing world, but I just think in business in general, that creative workers and creators are devalued, right? Like I think that they think that creativity is a commodity, and that people that work as creative folks tend to not get paid as much, or not as valued as much as people that work in like the tech field. You'll find that programmers. I'm not sure
that's true, but
well, certainly here in the U.S. they are. So as an example,
and maybe it's changed because Mad Men, in the Mad Men days, those guys were the rock stars. Of the day, right?
Sure, but like today, you'll find that if you find a Python programmer, that dude's making 80, 100 grand, where a designer, UX person might be making 65 grand, you know what I mean? Or an art, like our traditional art director or creative director, if they're making $100,000 a year, low 100s, they're making a lot of money in the United States. Whereas, I recently was hiring for a architect position, that somebody that we would, of course, now with the great reassessment, the prices of people gone up, but they were looking for $200,000 a year for somebody with like 5-6 years of experience. So anyway, as I was surfing LinkedIn, as I do in social media this past week, as I do, I saw an ad from a very prestigious university: learn digital marketing in 18 months. And
that's a long course. I got one and learn it in learn it in 6 days.
Right. And so like I saw that and it infuriated it and compelled me to post about it. Simply because I just think that further goes to perpetuate this myth of creativity and people that work in marketing, that it's something that you can easily teach yourself. You can go buy a book from Amazon or take a crash course online and somehow learn how to be a proficient and prolific digital marketer. I know I've worked with people that have dedicated years of their life to their careers and their craft. To insinuate that you could even learn the basics of just marketing in 18 months, let alone to learn any one of the 62 different channels of digital
Right.
marketing with any
Right.
proficiency in 18 months is insulting.
There's 3-year bachelor's degrees that take you from being an 18-year-old beer drinker to being a qualified economist. And there's nothing to say that a 3-year undergraduate degree qualifies you for anything except that you've read a bunch of books and listened to the professors that taught you. But I do think there is a difficulty in assessing hard skills versus soft skills. So, a Python programmer can say, I can write this many lines of code in a day and it'll do X and here's the results. Whereas a guy who's a branding guy who's thinking about psychology, he's thinking, if I change this font, what's the impact going to be on somebody reading this ad? If I change the color from light blue to dark blue, what difference is that going to have? That's the stuff that you learn by experience. And actually today it's easier because you've got things like A/B testing and multivariate testing and things, and you can say, right, we're going to put 500 ads out on Facebook, and if one of them gets a 30% click through and the other 3 get no click through, then we know. And maybe our gut said that was going to be the answer, but at least we know that now with some evidence.
I also think that there's like this kind of like misconception or misselling of quote unquote digital marketing as like, oh, I can in 6 weeks go out and learn how to master the Facebook market, like the ad suite on how to target ads and inline content to people on Facebook, and somehow now I'm a digital marketer.
Well, it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that in the Web3 crypto space, because you talk to some of these companies and they say, oh, we want a CMO. You say, okay, fine. What do you need your CMO to do? And they're like, oh, well, we need someone to run our Discord.
Right.
We need someone to run our Discord channel. That's what our CMO does. That's not marketing. That's community management, which is a subset of marketing. If somebody has no idea about digital marketing, in 8 days, you can actually give them a pretty decent foundation on how to give them a digital marketing plan and say, okay, go back to fundamentals. This is my customer proposition. These are my buyer personas. This is my customer promise. These are my keywords. Now, are they going to know as much as me? No, especially in a discipline that's creative or it's got soft skills attached to it. There is a certain amount of experience, grazed knees, war wounds, gray hair that you need to be able to be really, really good at it.
You got to understand that, for somebody that's like a small business owner, that's selling widgets on Amazon Marketplace or something, learning how to do Google ads or in Google keywords and Facebook ads is probably enough, right? But for a brand or somebody that's trying to build a brand, or somebody like Coca-Cola, their marketing machine is complex, right? They're doing campaigns and they're doing programmatic. In addition to organic and paid social and other type of content marketing that has to all work together in tandem, that requires coordination, planning, and creative that involves multiple skill sets and multiple teams.
Here's an analogy for you, which I've just thought of, right? I love reaction videos.
I love that that's your guilty pleasure.
That's my reaction video. And it's really funny because a lot of these reaction videos, especially around music, they kind of follow each other. And so one of these guys will watch something and then the rest of them will all do the same song and they'll all react to the same song. But there's an Australian guitarist called Tommy Emmanuel. I'll put this in the show notes, but this guy's been playing guitar for 45 years, right? And he does a version. Yeah. He does a version of classical gas. This guy is the guitarist. If you take the same analogy and you say, right, I can teach you guitar in 10 hours, and that's true. I can teach you guitar in 10 hours. I can show you the chords. I can say, right, this is where you put your fingers for an E, and this is where you put your fingers for a B flat, and this is how you do finger picking, and this is how you do strumming, and this is how you do tuning. And in 10 hours I can teach you guitar, but that doesn't mean you're going to be any good at it. So
Right.
this, what was his name? The New York writer who did the 10,000 hours thing, Malcolm Gladwell. He did a talk about the 10,000 hours that you need to become an expert at something. And I think that's been debunked by some people, but it's a similar kind of thing, right? I can teach you how to play guitar in 10 hours, but that doesn't mean you're going to be any good at it. You need to practice it. And you need to do it over and over and over and over and again to become an expert.
Yeah.
It's the same with digital marketing. I can teach you I can teach you digital marketing in 10 hours, but that doesn't mean you'll be any good at it.
That's right. And you have to go do it and do it on every day. And that, like you said, that's what it comes down to.
Then there's also a market for these people. There's only so many Python people who went and decided that they were going to learn how to code Python. And therefore they're in more demand because there's only so many of them, because it's hard, and therefore their price goes up. Whereas everyone thinks they can do marketing, and there's a bunch of those people out in the market, and therefore the price goes down because there's a whole bunch of people out there in the market
out there doing it,
flooding
right?
the market,
right? And then the amateurs are devaluing the people that are at. It's a doom loop.
Once again, this has been an enlightening discussion. Thank you very much, Corey, for your insight. I always appreciate your viewpoint.
I'll see you next week.